Hello, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and do lab one, which is basically a very basic introduction to Unity. So let's go ahead and open up Unity, and you'll get Unity Hub, and we want to click on New, and we want to create a 3D project, and you can call it like Lab 1. And then just give it a moment to open up. All right, so you should get something that looks like this. Let me just see if I can move this. No, okay, it's gonna it's gonna be tricky, but it's okay. We'll deal with it. So you're gonna get something that looks like this with different windows, and I'll go through each one. So this window is your scene. So right now we don't have anything in your scene, but you can see if I click on this hand tool here, I can drag the mouse around, and that's something that you're going to really want when you're working with Unity, is you're going to want a mouse. So if you don't have one right now, it's a good thing to invest in. Just get a cheap one. So right now I'm clicking and dragging my mouse around. I can also right click and move my point of view around my current, pivot around my current point. And I can also zoom in using, this is my central wheel on my mouse. I can zoom in and out. So if you do get a mouse, it's a good idea to get one with a wheel in the center. So let's actually go ahead and import an object. So everything in Unity is made up of these game objects. So we're going to go ahead and put in a 3D cube like so. And you can see here that the cube appears in the scene. So if I again, so if I use my right click, I can look around it like this, or I can actually go up and down because I'm on my hand tool right now. I can go up and down or left and right and look at this cube. So let's do a little bit of an introduction. So here on the left, we have this hierarchy window, and you can see here that it contains the various game objects that are in this scene. So we just imported a cube here, as you can see. And when I click on the various game objects, you'll notice here on the inspector on the right that it changes. So let's have a look at the cube first of all. So here you can see that the cube has these various components. So this is a component, the transform, the mesh renderer is another component, the box collider is another component, and the components just add functionality to your game objects. So let's just focus on the transform for a moment. So you can see here that it has a position with XYZ coordinates, a rotation, and a scale. So in the slides, which are optional, you can actually go in and have a look at, I've put a great amount of detail about the XYZ coordinates and the positions and so forth. But just so you know, this whole scene is made up of XY coordinates. And right now, our cube has these XY coordinates, XYZ coordinates in this scene. So I think what might be nice is if I just show you a few things right now. So here, by the way, this is quite nice. In the top right-hand corner, you can see that this has an X, Y always points up, and then we have Z pointing this way. So let's do this first of all. So let's click on the transform on these three dots and go to reset. And you can see here that will reset the position of your cube to 0, 0, 0, which is quite nice. So we can go ahead and have a look at that. And one thing I would strongly recommend that you do is that you start to get used to using the mouse and this hand tool to move around and navigate around your scene. So let me emphasize again. So right now, if I'm going to, I'm on my hand tool here with this hand, and I'm going to right click, and you can see this eye icon appearing, and this allows me to pivot around my current position. But then if I were to, if you go ahead and press Alt on your keyboard and then click on your left mouse, then you can see you actually end up rotating, pivoting around the highlighted game object, which right now is the cube. So there's a nice difference to see between the two. And what we did was we reset the position of our cube to 0, 0, 0. So if you go down and do this, you can see that our cube is kind of like floating. Can you see these grid lines? They're like floating halfway in and halfway above and halfway below these lines. And that's because we have a scale of 1. When we do 0, 0, 0, it immediately puts that halfway here. So if we were to increase the y by 0.5, then you can see it actually ends up sitting on these grid lines. And we can come back to that in future tutorials, but just so you know, you can adjust the X, Y, Z position, and we're going to come to the rotation in a moment and the scale as well. And you can see here, this highlights for you your Y axis, your X axis, and your Z axis. So if you click on one of these, you can move your cube, say, along the Z axis. And as you do that, you can watch here on the Z position of your cube, how it's increasing and decreasing. We can do the same with the y-axis, so we can move it up and down, and you can see here it moves up and down, and same with the x-axis. So you can see here, like when I'm not clicking on it, the x is red and the x-axis is red here, the z-axis is blue, and the y-axis is green here as well. And just so you know, like with most other things, if you do, so I'm using Windows to do this, but so I'm going to say Control a lot, but if you have a Mac, then you can use, I think it's Command. It's the one with the sign on it with the 4, you know, the Apple key. So you can use that instead of Control. So if you want to like undo something you've done, you can always do Control Z, or if you want to redo it, you can do Control Y. Or you can say undo move or redo move here. Oh, and you can see here when I clicked on this scene, we went off the cube, so you can always click back on the cube to highlight it. So now I just want to show you a little bit about rotation. So you click on this rotate tool up here, and you can see now that it highlights something slightly different. We can actually click on one of these and we can rotate our object however much we want. Now, as I'm rotating here, you can see in the transform that the Y value is changing here. And that's because we're actually rotating around the Y axis, which is pointing straight up. If I wanted to rotate around the X axis, you know, I could rotate like this, and you can see the values changing here. And you can also set them here like this. Say you wanted like a nice clean rotation like this. You could set it to 90. The other thing is with this, so if you wanted to, you could try to do them all at the same time, but I really wouldn't recommend that. So if I'm going to undo, I would just recommend picking one of these one at a time to rotate. And I'm just clicking undo when I do that. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is the scale tool up here on the left. So if I do that, then you can see here, that's going to correspond to the scale on the transform component. So I can make things bigger or smaller. So for example, I could just do it along the x-axis like this, or I could, oh sorry, that was the z-axis, or here I can do it along the x-axis like this, or along the y-axis, or I could click in the center and do all of them at the same time. So I'm going to reset these to 1 here. And then the other thing I want to show you about the cube is, let's give it a material. Because right now, you can see here, if we look at the default material, it's kind of bland. So let's create a new material for it. In order to do that, I'm going to introduce a new window. So here, this at the bottom is the project window. So this is essentially like where all your files are. So as we do different tutorials, you're going to be adding 3D models and audio and things like that. And we're going to be adding them to our files and our folders. So these actually all correspond to the files and folders in your system, in your computer. So somewhere in your computer, you have an assets folder with a scenes folder inside of it. And actually, if you wanted to, you could right click and I would do show in Explorer, and there it would be. Anyway, so here, what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to go ahead and create a materials folder. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to create and folder, and then I'm going to say materials. And then I'm going to double click so I'm inside materials. Then I'm going to right click. I'm going to click on create, and I'm going to create a material. And let's call this material cube, like that. And so make sure that this is clicked on and highlighted so you can see it in your inspector. And then I'd like you to click on albedo and then double click or click on this color selection icon. So you can go ahead and pick a color. I'm going to pick red. You can pick whatever you want. And you can see it here appearing. And then you can close that. And then you can go ahead and drag and drop this material onto your cube. So you can see now that it's red. And if you want to, you can always go ahead and change the color here. So now let's click back on our cube so we can see. And now you can see under the mesh renderer that we have this cube material. So it's no longer the default. Now I want to show you a couple of things also about the main camera and the directional light, because these, especially the main camera, that's an important one. So let's go ahead and click on main camera, and I'm going to just go ahead and let's do a bit of a rotation around, and then we'll go, you can click on your hand so we can go a bit this way. I'm going to zoom out a bit so you can zoom out. And then I'm going to click Alt and rotate a bit more. So can you see these lines here? And if I zoom out a bit more, so this is really obviously really big, but this is what the camera is seeing. So I'm going to zoom back in. So here's the camera, and it also has a transform component. So it has a position, a rotation, and a scale. And here in the bottom right, you can see the camera preview. Let me just make this a bit smaller. So there we go. So you can see this camera preview. This is what the camera sees. So if I were actually to go here, so you see we're currently on the scene, and if I were to click on game, you would just see what the camera sees. And when we press play later on, this is going to be our view. So, so you can see that, you know, we can see what our camera is going to see, and we can also move our camera around as we wish. So if we wanted to, you know, we could click again on our move tool, and we could move it closer to our object. We can move it further away. And as you do that, you can see the camera scene there. We could move it up or down, and you can see how that's changing there as well. I'm going to undo so we get back to our nice default, which apparently at the moment is Z is -10 and Y is 1. But if you wanted to, you could change those. If I click on the rotate, you could also, you know, move your camera up and down like you wanted to here, or left and right like this as well. So really, this is like your camera person and you're sort of affecting the way that they can view things. So I'm just undoing there. So that's Control Z or Command Z if you're on a Mac, I believe. Okay, and so just like all the other objects, you know, we can also increase the scale and so forth. And then I wanted to show you the directional light. So this is this thing here. So you can change the color of your light. You can turn it off and on. So here, if we turned it off, it's gone completely black. So let's turn it back on. It's not something we're going to play around with a lot, but if you wanted to change like the rotation of your light or something like this, you can see you can play around with it like that. I'm going to undo. There we go. Okay. I think what we'll do now, I think we're ready to do, oh, by the way, let's do a save. So I'm going to do a Control S. Let's do a save. Okay, good. You can also go to File and Save. And we're saving this as Lab 1. And when it's not saved, like here, let me move this cube a little bit. You'll see that an asterisk appears next to your scene name. So that means that it's not been saved. And then, you know, when you save it, obviously, that goes away. So what I want to show you now, but I don't know if you can see it clearly because Zoom, okay, let me move this under there so you can see it a bit better. So you see here at the top center, you have this play, pause, and this step buttons. So don't worry about the pause and step buttons, but the play button is an important one for you to learn. So when you click play, like the colors change a bit, and then you get to see what's happening in your scene from the camera's point of view. Now, right now, nothing is happening in our scene. We only just see our cube because we haven't set any animation, we haven't set anything to change or move or anything like that. But one thing that's important for you to know is any changes that you make when you press play won't be saved when you stop playing it. So when you want to change things, you have to press play again, and that will stop it. You don't want to press pause because then you won't go out of the play mode. So you want to just press play to stop it again. Okay. So I want to just do a really like simple physics collision with you, just so you can see something moving. But in order to do that, let's go and so click on your cube here, and let's go and talk about your box collider for a moment. Your box collider component. So if I uncheck box collider and then check it again, you can see these dotted lines appearing in your cube, and the box collider just gives you some kind of volume to your game object, which allows and gives it physics to interact with. So what I'm going to do now is get you to actually add a component for the first time. So if you make sure you're clicked on cube, and then go ahead and click on component, and then in your search you can type rigid body, and then you'll see rigid body and rigid body 2D. So we want just rigid body. We don't want rigid body 2D because we're working in 3D. And you can see here that rigid body component will appear. And one of the variables that it will have is use gravity. And that's checked right now. So let's actually go ahead and press play again. You can save your scene if you want. And then let's see what happens right now. So I'm going to press play. And my cube falls. And if I actually end up going to my scene, it's going to be too small now. but there it is disappearing. Let's do that again. So stop pressing play, press play again, and then go to your scene, press Alt, and then look down. You can see your cube falling away. And that's because it's going to fall away forever. And that's because we gave it gravity and now it can drop and there's nothing to stop it from falling. So that will continue to fall forever. So let's press play again so you can stop that. So let's now do something to stop it falling. So what I like to do is go ahead and add a plane. So let's go ahead and click on Game Object, 3D Object, and then let's click on Plane here. So this is some kind of area, you know, like it is a plane, obviously. So if let's do this. So let's go to our hand tool, and you can see here it is, and it's let's actually click on reset. So we reset it to 0, 0, 0. And let's move ourselves over here. So you can see right now that our cube is directly on the plane. So you can see this is the 0 line here for our, can you see that here? And it's just directly on the plane. So what we want to do is let's actually give our plane a color, because right now it just looks really boring. So make sure your plane is highlighted. And again here under Mesh Renderer, its color is default. So let's go back down to Materials, and we're going to right click, go back to Create, and we're going to click on Material, and we'll call this Plane. And then we'll click on Albedo. And you can pick whatever color you want. I'm going to pick a nice bright green, and then as you drag it, you can see the green changing here. Let's do that. Okay. And then let's go and click and drag and drop that onto the plane. So that's a bit easier to see now. So if you go down, you can see that there. And then I just want to show you, so if we click on camera, you can see this is your camera's view, or you can click on game and you can see this is your camera's view here. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and click on cube and this move tool, and then click on this Y arrow, and we're just going to move it up a bit. And then you can go back to your hand tool and come up. And remember, if you click on Alt, you can rotate around your selected object so you can see it. And then if you click on game, you can see this is what the camera sees right now. And then we'll go back to scene. So now, you can save if you want. Let's press play, see what happens. And now you see that cube hits the ground, it hits the plane, and then it stops falling. And that's because we have this box collider around the cube. And then if I click on the plane here, you'll see it doesn't have a box collider, it has a mesh collider, which is slightly different. But those two things collide together so that it doesn't fall through. And then we'll stop pressing play. And now I just want to show you something. If I uncheck the box collider and then I press play, you'll see it will fall through. And if you click on scene, click Alt and look down, you can see there it is, off it goes forever. Okay, and then we'll stop that. And then we'll click back on that and save. So this is really what you want to produce for Lab 1. So you want to have created all these things in a rigid body so that it doesn't fall through. And then just make sure that for yourself that you feel comfortable, you know, using your various tools, like your hand tool, your move, rotate, scale tool. Make sure that you've created your materials for your cube and your plane. And don't worry, there's so much to Unity. You don't need to know everything, and we'll take you through, well, I'll take you through step by step for all the things that you need to know. But yeah, so hopefully that's given you some idea of your introduction to Unity.